Hypercultural identity. In Leibniz's universe, every being has a fixed place and a fixed identity. It is a universe embedded in a divine harmony, in a cosmic order. Nothing can trouble it. Nothing. Nothing alien penetrates its orderly inwardness. Thus, none of the nomads' monads look out the window. Our present age is characterized by the collapse of horizons. Contexts that provide meaning and identity are disappearing. And the symptomatic results are fragmentation, a kind of pointillism, and pluralization. This also applies to the way we experience time. There is no longer the sort of fulfilling time that is due to a beautiful structure of past, present, and future. That is to a story, to narrative suspense. Time becomes naked, that is, devoid of narration. A point-like time or event time emerges. Because it is poor in horizons, this kind of time is not able to carry much meaning. Today's constellation of being seems to lack the gravitational centers that would unite parts into a binding totality. Being dissipates. It turns into a hyperspace of possibilities and events, which, instead of gravitating towards each other, only whiz around, so to speak. The decay of horizons is felt as a painful void, as a narrative crisis, but it also makes possible a new practice of freedom. Kind of like Sam Hyde for a second there. And Jesus. Better than Jesus over here, guys. Sometimes I feel like Han is like, I don't know, what is it with him? Like, he studied Heidegger, but most of the time he's just kind of critically tearing him apart. And like, biggest thing is that he doesn't seem to agree with Heidegger, even though that was his focus of study. That's an interesting type of person. Most people would just, focus on what they like or what they do agree with. He focused on something that he so basely just disagreed with completely, almost like it gave him energy. He's like a living example of Heidegger's philosophy not standing the test of time. So let's continue. A world with a hypertextual structure consists of countless windows, so to speak, but none of the windows open onto an absolute horizon. This lack of a horizon-like anchor for being makes possible a new way of proceeding, a new perspective. When windowing, You slide from one window to the next, from one possibility to another. This makes possible a personal narrative, an individual projection of Daseinsentwurf. When the horizon disintegrates into multicolored possibilities, you can cobble together an identity from these parts. In place of a monochrome self, there emerges a multicolored self, a colored self. Right. A so-called patchwork religion, one could also call it a multicolored religion, presupposes the decay of a unified horizon of meaning. The decay of the horizons of meaning leads to a hypercultural side-by-side of different forms of faith on the basis of which individuals can construct their own religions. A plurality of colors and forms, however, is not always a sign of vitality. In the case of religion, it may herald the end, annihilation. Art also works additively, helping itself to whatever it finds in the hypercultural pool of expressive forms and stylistic means. Hypercultural art no longer pursues the truth in the strong sense. It has nothing to reveal. Like patchwork religion, it presents itself as multicolored and multiform. The truth. No longer pursue the truth. What is the drive of art, if not the truth? Hyperculture. R.I.P. Sophie. Hyperculture does not produce a homogeneous, monochrome, uniform culture. Rather, it triggers increasing individualization. Individuals follow their own inclinations, cobbling together their identities from what they find in the hypercultural pool of practices and forms of life. In this way, patchwork structures and identities emerge. Their multicolored nature points towards a new practice of freedom, one ode to the hypercultural defacticization of the life world. Defacticization. That's what I'm always talking about, dude. It's defactizations. Facts don't care about your feelings. Don't you know that? It's defacticization. I'm just kidding. Like, defacticization is a hilarious hyphen word, but that perfectly captures this book. Like, this world has no facts. You know, you're just presented all the possibilities all at once. There's no story. There's no sense of time or place. It's defactized. The fact of its existence is now digital and perpetual and infinite. Right? Just like this video is. Just like this creepy, weird video you're watching right now. Exactly like that. Exactly like that. You know know that band Mogwai, Come On Die Young? I could do that. I could totally do Come On Die Young, their second album, Mogwai post-rocker group, worth checking out. Still going, surprisingly. Just released another album. And there was a Pitchfork review of their albums that I thought was really good, actually. Also, Britney Spears. Like, does everyone love Britney Spears? Because I think that's great. Like, but do you really love her? You know, like, or do you just love her because she's popular? You know what I mean? Like, do you love her? Like, the kind of awkward, silly, flirty, like, I don't know if that's even the right way to describe it. The alien nature of her mixed with that boldness, okay? And then how young she was, yet so confidently putting this message on display in such simplified language. So yeah, basically, she has a Sagittarius stellium just like me, and we have the same sun, moon, Mars, Venus. We have all the same astrology signs. So I don't know, I kind of love her. Like when I listen to Radar on my radar, okay, Radar is amazing. I cry listening to Radar because it's just so good. I love it. Like, she seems like a kid, and she succeeded so well at what she was doing. Like, she's kind of a weird indie artist. It's not like she's good. It's not like she's meant to be so famous. She's just like so pure. That confidence is a pure representation of her. So yeah, no, there's something about her Capricorn being in Venus, which I also have, that is really weird. It's really weird. It's like her expression of love and sex and all this, which was largely misunderstood. It's connected to a Capricorn Venus, which is just a weird placement, especially when you're a fire sign, Sagittarius, stellium, and an alien. Like, now your love is Capricorn? Like, that's so strange. Don't think about it too much. Okay. Yeah. No, of course. She's been married multiple times. She's got a very strained relationship with her family. Her dad, her mom, even her sister, surprisingly. I don't know if that's really in the astrology, though. But, I hope for the best for her. I hope, free Britney, of course. That took way too long. And I hope, just like everyone else on this planet, we all find some kind of peace and happiness while we're here. So I read this whole book, and it's like he doesn't present answers or solutions. That's kind of the funniest thing about him. He just is commenting and observing, and then presenting ideas to you with no real judgment attached. So then you have to kind of make the judgments yourself out of this massive philosophical stuff. He's just presenting a bunch of philosophical ideas to you without giving you much judgment. Maybe he guides it a little bit. I guess the book was it's happening, hyperculture, and in the past they couldn't even imagine it. They couldn't even think of it. It wasn't even on their radar. On my radar, on my radar, on my radar. You want a piece of me? I'm an American dream. I get the band in the magazine. Derriere. Did you know Dr. Luke did something on Circus? The album Circus, he did a few songs, or he worked on it, and he also was associated with Benny Blanco? I think so. I think that's true. He was a mentor to Benny Blanco, and that explains why his music is actually really good. And I know Dr. Luke was canceled by Kesha, but that was so legendary. I will never forget TikTok and Dr. Luke and, Kesha. It was a vibe, wake up in the morning feeling like P. Diddy, right? So, yeah, now he works with Kim Petras, who is also really cool. And they're doing some amazing stuff. I feel bad for Kesha because she had a moment there. And now she's not getting her moments. Now. Okay, here, let's do one more thing. So in this book, he says Deleuze and Guattari sketch a rhizomatic relationship between an orchid and a wasp. And he's like, okay, the orchid deterritorializes by forming an image, a tracing of a wasp. But the wasp re-territorializes on that image. The wasp is nevertheless deterritorialized, becoming a piece in the orchid's reproductive apparatus, but it re-territorializes the orchid by transporting its pollen. So yeah, he's saying it's a rhizomatic structure. Apparently some plants are, it's this kind of abstract idea where, okay, the relationship is only apparently governed by mimicry. What is actually going on is a veritable becoming, a becoming wasp of the orchid and a becoming orchid of the wasp. Despite its intense dispersal, a rhizome also forms tree-like and root-like structures. And in the same way, branches or parts of a root suddenly sprout rhizome-like buds. As a de-internalized, de-rooted, and de-sided culture, hyperculture behaves in a rhizomatic fashion. There are rhizomatic transitions between subcultural and cultural structures, between the peripheries and centers, between temporary concentrations and renewed dispersals. This may also lead to the formation of dominant cultural structures that resemble the knots or bulbs in a rhizomatic net. But these disperse and dissolve again. That is so accurate. So I was thinking that that's Britney Spears too. Like Britney Spears was a bud that spread rhizomatically. Okay, and she herself was from Madonna's bud, right? Who was from Michael Jackson's bud. And then if you look at the past 50 years of American pop music culture, it's got a kind of a story, narrative, but there are these like buds and structures and roots and deterritorializing of all these different things. None of it was happening in a vacuum. Britney knows she was a direct response to Daft Punk for her album. But then she's also a response to Madonna in her position as recording artist, who was a response to Michael Jackson in being a public figure larger than life. And like now in these days of hyperculture, I think it's difficult to define, like, are you doing a Britney? Like Britney Spears is weird now, and people think she's weird. And she doesn't even think she's famous anymore. She thinks she's old, even though she was so young when she was doing her music. And that was in her chart as well, which is not in my chart. Like, no, I'm not going to do anything until I'm like 70 years old, so good luck to y'all. But yeah, like who continued on that track of superstardom, right? Like I think The Weeknd is a pretty weak but darker version of Michael Jackson. You know, he did that Can't Feel It or something. I Can't Stop My Face. And it was like when Michael Jackson had died, he kind of took a little bit of that energy for that track. And now he's got superstardom, but he's not the star like Michael Jackson was. So it's like in the absence of Michael Jackson, we just take a substitute that approximates that skill, but in continuing, he defined himself differently. I mean, like Britney is defined differently than Madonna. The Weeknd is defined differently than Michael Jackson, right? And like through music, through popular culture, you can see how all of it changed. Like Michael Jackson changed the world. Madonna changed everything. Britney Spears changed everything, truly. It's like that kind of scope, that kind of hyper-cultural influence. Like, I guess that is The Weeknd right now. I mean, I like, the Playboy Cardi guy, which is hilarious, but I think he really is doing something. No, there really is something about him that is good. I mean, he's not a musician. I wouldn't call him that, but he's like an aesthetician. He's a very aesthetic person. He knows what he likes, and he makes sure to maintain a aura, which, by the way, some of these books talk about aura, which is hilarious. And like when he teamed up with Lil Uzi Vert, that was genius. And now Lil Uzi doesn't even have as much energy, and he's kind of going on his own, going with Kanye West and all these famous big people. Like, did you hear Cardi on Tyler's song that was cut off the album? It's on Chromacopia. Thought I Was Dead. But Cardi's verse on that was insane. It was like a circus or something. Why would you take that off the album? I guess because it doesn't fit the rest. He's kind of outshining Tyler on that song. Like, I don't know. It's kind of creepy. He is pretty good at what he does. It's just a really weird and specific thing that he does. Thought I was dead. Thought I was dead. Thought I was dead. Thought I was dead. Yeah, like Benny Blanco does that too. He writes these really catchy songs, and they have the catchiest hooks in the world, and they're like stuck in your head for days. Right? Like, what is that? That's like what the Beatles started off doing. And to think that it still continues fascinates me. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand, dear Prudence. All right, so maybe next time read Vita Contemplativa. I don't know, maybe that's a little too basic. I feel like hyperculture has got kind of a cool vibe to it. Especially to post on the internet and be a crazy weirdo about it. I'll find something good. It'd be funny. Let's do, this was very aesthetic, this book. when you open the cover, it's the same. like, like remember she wore the jacket that says "I really don't care." She talks about that in this book. You know what? That'd be fun. I'm gonna read you just a little bit. No. I mean, this is so highly politicized. He's the no. I don't know. Everyone's gonna go crazy, but no, she's good. I think they're gonna do a good job. We'll see. Some people are just too intense these days in this hyperculture. You know, it's like you talk about the president. This wasn't how it was when Obama was president. Or maybe I just didn't know it. But it was like you could talk freely. You could have your own opinion. It wasn't a war. It wasn't the culture wars. People weren't taking sides so intensely as they do now. So I guess I'm crossing into politics here. Maybe that's what I'll do next is Byung-Chul Han's more political stuff. But like as a political analyst, he is really weak. Like he's really more of an abstract philosopher, and that's it. Like the actual politics of it is, you know, kind of silly. Like, you know, when everyone's Hitler now, and yet you don't even know anything about Hitler, and then you're just calling people Hitler just because it's a trend. Like, no, read Mein Kampf, you know, read a book, you know, learn about the real life history of this man and what was going on, World War One, World War Two, you know. Like, it's just really silly to just call people Hitler when they're not. But maybe if you had a real conversation, then that would be something, you know, like some of the tactics that the Nazis used to consolidate their power, maybe were just so damn effective that it like transcends time. I mean, the symbol was a symbol of, you know, peace and endless flow of life, you know, from the Far East. And that was a timeless symbol that now the Nazis have turned into the swastika, and now everyone thinks that it's off limits and taboo. And I think that is something Byung-Chul Han could talk about, actually. He probably does. Yeah, like with this, how sacred it is. The sacredness of the presidency has been totally altered. Big time. Nobody thinks it's sacred anymore. No one thinks politics is sacred, even though you're a bunch of public servants trying to help people. I guess the death of God that Nietzsche described was the precursor to such a situation. People don't even like Nietzsche. People say Nietzsche was just an edgy boy. Like that is so ridiculous. If you actually read Nietzsche's books, they're quite phenomenal. It's hard to believe he was, you know, lived so long ago, because his insights are so wildly modern. Like, it's crazy. Some people that lived 100 years ago were just extremely smart or something. Even Aleister Crowley, you have to admit, he was a smart cookie. Like, if you read what he wrote, it's very, very interesting. It's more interesting than what people write now. It's way more interesting than what people write now. Alright, so this has gone on long enough. Thank you, and bye-bye. Have a good one.